Namaste, Anupama ji. It's a great pleasure to talk to you formally at this platform. Of course, we have talked a lot of times. First on internet through social media on Facebook for many years, and then personally also. So, Ras is in your very being. We are today going to talk on it. You are an artist and an aesthete. Ras is in your very being, but for a person like me, and forgive me for looking like a fool, I have the Shastriya excuse of the Mandabuddhi Chhatra. Let me put up this question. First of all, what is Rasa? Of someone who doesn't understand it. Rasa, of course, that word is there in our vocabulary, daily vocabulary also, because in Hindi, in most parts of North India, our kitchen was called as Rasoi, the place where the ras emerges.
Right.
So, we associated that idea, of course, with the fine quality of food, the way it nourishes our bodies and souls. But beyond that, if you are not an artist and an aesthete, that's where you stop. So, what is rasa for an artist and an aesthete?
First of all, thank you for having me here, Pankajji. And it's a pleasure to talk to you as always. And I totally do not agree that you're not an aesthete. I think you're as much as one given your wide understanding of literature. So it's a beautiful analogy you brought up actually, because even in the Natya Shastra, when he talks about the Rasa Siddhanta or the Rasa Sutra, he takes the example from Rasayana Shastra and from culinary, the art of culinary, itself he takes it because he says, Nana Vyanjanair. When you put all the different spices, all the herbs, all the ingredients in equal measure, that is when an edible dish is prepared or something that can be relished is prepared. And that exactly, he says, that is exactly what happens. That is Rasa Nishpatti. He says when all the bhavas are put together in equal measure or come together in equal measure, that is when rasa is produced. So that is how he also explains it. So it's beautiful. And of course, Bharata has taken from multiple disciplines, as you know. He takes from Rasayana Shastra, he takes from medicine, from the art of, from the science of medicine, he takes from Yajna, he takes from so many sources to actually fashion the Rasa Sutra or the entire Rasa Siddhanta. So when you say what is Rasa, well, Rasa is God. I think that's the primary, answer I can say, because realization of Rasa has been equated to realization of Paramatma or realization of Brahman or the Absolute. And this is a theory that is held consistent for over 600-700 years across Alankarikas, whether it is in the field of aesthetics or poetics. So everyone has said that Rasa is God itself. So I think that is only short point as to what is Rasa.
So, as an artist, while you create art, there is a certain bhava. Your chit is at a certain level. That is where you are getting your inspiration from, and you're creating some piece of art, whether it is dance, whether it is a piece of song, a stanza of song, or a piece of literature. What is the process which makes you to be able to convey that bhava to a reader or a viewer? Because why would he be able to partake the emotions that you are going through? They are privy to your own subject, they are privy to your own individual. It's an internal world we are talking of art. This is not science. You cannot just put it out there and have everyone test it. So that's your internal world, subjective world. You are speaking of the waves that are rising on your chitta bhumi. But how is it even possible? Someone looking at you while performing that piece of art or while reading a piece of literature, how is it even possible that he is able to partake the emotion or even a part of it while they are doing so?
That's a wonderful question, and it's a very elaborate question actually, because when you say the Chitta Bhumi, I'm also reminded of the term, the Hridaya Akasha from the Chandogya Upanishad, because this is the beauty of Indian art. What I've always found is the beauty of Indian art is the fact that the enactment or the dramatic activity is actually not happening externally. It is happening within the heart of the spectator. And there is a sophisticated, highly evolved, highly thought of process by which you awaken those states in the spectator whom we call the Sahridaya, or somebody who already has the latent vasanas to be able to experience what is being given. So he already has that. His chittavritti already contains within it layers of vasanas. So those are invoked.
You are
and
tapping into those.
You are tapping into those because you cannot ever remember something, or you cannot ever experience something that you have never experienced already before.
Yes, yes.
Somewhere on some life, somewhere or the other. So those vasanas are already existent there. And it is through the make-believe world of enactment that you are reintroducing the
That real
spectator
element.
to what he already knows. So you are just pulling him with you. That is why the word abhinaya actually means, abhi is face to face and naya is to lead. So the word abhinaya actually means come face to face with the spectator and lead him where you want him to go. That is how the word abhinaya has also evolved. That is how the word abhinaya comes. So you are not, that is a beauty. You are not like, unlike Western art, you are not involving, you are not telling the spectator, observe. You are telling the spectator here, participate. You are asking him to participate in the activity.
Wonderful.
That is the main difference. Because for us, he has to be very much part of the entire process of Rasa Nishpatti. Otherwise, it will not happen. And what he already has within him, you are just tapping his potential to experience it. So I think that is the beauty. And there is a very refined process and a very highly intuitive study on human nature, which puts this process in place to bring the audience and the actor
At the
and
same
at
level.
the same level, and
consciousness.
for this loop to happen.
Yeah.
So this is a very well conceived and a very well understood
Yeah.
process
Okay.
through which we can actually do that.
Okay. So for the artist to be able to tap into the sentiment, the bhava of the spectator, and for him or her to be able to understand the bhava of the artist, there needs to be a medium which we are talking here, a common medium, a universal substrata, if you will. So you use the word Hridaya Akash. There is another word for it, Chidakash.
Chittakash.
Now, Chid, what Chid are we talking about? Because that Chit can be mine. That is extremely limited in my own experience of this life and maybe some memories of the past. But it is an extremely limited Chit. How is it possible? And if we are, because there is a concept in literature, Western literature, that every man is an island, that it is impossible to get the emotions across because we are all living in our own subjective worlds. So basically they say, declare that art is impossible, that it is all an abhinaya of art. It is not really art, they are just pretending that it's art because it is impossible to get across an emotion, because where is the commonality, where is that universal element? But here, while we are talking about this, it certainly looks to me as if there is a universal substrata here, there is a Chidakash, but what Chit are we talking about here exactly?
I think to answer your question, if I just delineate the stages of the process called Sadharanikarana, I think that is something that we will, we will arrive at this answer. Because the word Sadharana actually means ordinary. But here in this concept, he is using it in the context of making it universal, making the emotion universal. It is not, it goes beyond the stage of subjective.
Yes.
And it becomes a universal emotion which everyone can experience at the same time. And for this, there is a highly developed system in place, which they call the process of Sadharanikarana. The foundation for it is laid in the Natashastra when Bharata talks about Sahridaya. But it is Abhinavagupta and later Bhattanayaka who crystallized this process. Especially Bhattanayaka gives us very beautifully this process of Sadharanikarana.
How it happens?
How it happens. So he says there are two entities. One is the Sahridaya Preshaka, whom he calls as the actor. And one is the Sahridaya Prabhakara, who is the spectator. Now he says these initially, when the whole enactment begins, these are two different entities, the Preshaka and the Prabhakara. Now what you need to do through the medium of verbal and non-verbal expression, which he calls sandeshas, actually he calls it sanketa. He says it's a code. These codes can be verbal, non-verbal, they can be language, they can be music, they can be literature, as you said, they could be expression, they could be costume, makeup, anything. So they are verbal and non-verbal codes, sanketas. So you encode the message, which he calls sandesha, through these different sanketas, and you send it through what he calls a sarani or a medium. Now this medium can be tactile, it can be visual, it can be oral, it can be, it can be so many mediums through which you are sending this message. Now this process he calls as abhivyanjana, the sending of the message or the sandesha. Now at some point when it touches the Prabhakara, it becomes what he calls Rasās svadana. So it is happening almost simultaneously, where you are encoding your message, sending it, he is decoding it.
Okay.
He is decoding it through the Rasās svadana, and nothing happens until the pratikriya happens. That is, there is a response. For this, he says simplification of the idea is very important.
Yes, yes.
You have to simplify it, you have to make it accessible.
Yes.
And the codes you write,
that's when it will travel, otherwise
that's when it will travel, because the codes you write must be something that he can easily decode. So then he decodes it, and then he creates a pratikriya. That pratikriya reaches the actor back, and now the process becomes two-way.
Okay.
Because now what I have been sending,
and this is all happening at the same time.
This is happening simultaneously over a period of the play. So it is a psychologically you are prepping your viewer to slowly ascend from his day-to-day life and his mundane activities. You are raising to the levels of, you're raising the levels of consciousness to the extent that if there are 50 people of different, different types and temperaments in the audience, you are psychologically prepping them all to rise at every point. And then when this decoding happens effectively, in the middle he says there are many things called doshas or miscommunications, where you are sending a message, it may not reach correctly. But once all that is pushed to the side and actually he is able to decode it, that is when the loop forms. This loop, he says, is a loop of the actor giving, they receiving, they giving back, and then the actor re-giving, and then this loop is formed. At a point, he says, it reaches a point called nididhyasana, where in this loop, there is one particular point. It's also called the single point theorem in physics. That one point which will form as a loop is progressing. That is a point where suddenly there is a communion between the spectator and the actor. Now at this point, there is no need of any more strenuous communication.
Yes.
It becomes a very subtle,
effortless
communication. That is the point when rasa enters. That is the point when rasa nishpatti happens, and the word they use for it is sakshatkara. So that means rasa is nothing but the deity of whom you are doing upasana every day. So there is sakshatkara, and what the entire audience at that point of time feels is a word they call moksha.
Acha.
They use the word moksha.
The very word moksha.
The very word moksha.
Technically in
sadharanikarana as a principle,
wonderful.
At the moment of sakshatkara, all the sahridayas are in a state of moksha or complete liberation, because through the actor, through the entire process of universalization, what they have done is they have realized the self.
The self.
The truth, the absolute truth. They have come face to face with it for that period of time.
Yeah.
So this is a concerted, clear methodology of how to make this communion happen.
So the bigger self that they are tapping into, virtually you are describing a process in which they are rising from their petty selves that we all are as individuals or the residents of a particular city, of a particular race or ethnicity, and then they rise above it. They tap into something which is spelt in English with the capital self. So, all of this process, first of all, it's erringly similar to when you go to a temple and the way
It's
darshana is
absolutely the
described.
same. Yes,
Is it
exactly
the
the
same
same.
thing?
So that me after when I read about Sadharanikarana, it just baffled me that it is exactly what you're calling an upasana.
Yes, yes.
You know what the actor is doing is going and sitting in front of the audience, like how a devotee goes and sits in front of the deity.
Yeah. So, in a temple, what happens that on the outside of the walls, the whole sansara is there. Every scene, every act is being played out. As he starts going inside, you see that the vigrahas are lessening in number, and they are more of the aspects of the same deity who is Virajman in the Garbhagriha. As you approach the Garbhagriha, actually the number of deities and the forms, they keep falling off, until when you reach the Garbhagriha, it's only the deity, image of the deity that you are there. And when the act of darshan happens, it is a process of nothing but ascent and descent of consciousness. And like you said, sakshatkara, that the Bhagwan and the Bhakt, they become the same, they become one. So, this wonderful similarity between two disciplines, is it a norm with Hindu disciplines or Indian disciplines of art?
So I think across the board, if we see, as you yourself put it, it is always from the multiple to become one. This is always the goal, I think, of every Hindu discipline.
Yeah.
Right? It's what you have written about and what we have read also when you say it. That the ultimate goal is to remove that duality.
Yes. Yes.
And to become one with whatever you seek. The seeker and the seeked becoming one. I think this is the inveterate theme that runs
Across
through
all the
across
disciplines.
all Indian disciplines
Okay.
of thought.
Okay. So, for all of this to happen, the idea that there is an absolute truth or absolute standard of beauty is a must, because if there is none, there won't be a common medium. Then there won't be universalization. Then there is no meaning of one individual to reach across the infinite chasm, which is there in space also, in real space. What is that element, the ether, in which everything travels? So, it necessitates the existence of an absolute truth. So, is that so? Is that so? Is that very evident in all of our? Because they also say that when they talk about rasa and the Navarasas, they said that originally it was just a method of enjoying the world, 8 rasas, and they say that Shanta rasa is something that Brahminical patriarchs, so to say, that they just tailored it on later on.
Well, I think there are series of arguments that disprove this theory.
Yeah.
Because, of course, Shantarasa is a later edition, as we all know. But right from Abhinavagupta to Bhattanayaka to Udbhata to Rudrata to Vishwanatha to Anandavardhana, they have all argued for the inclusion of Shantarasa. And the very first time we hear Shantarasa entering the pantheon and it being called Navarasa is when we look at Udbhata's Kavyalankara Sarasangraha on Kavya. So I think it is not the need for inclusion of this as a Brahmin concept that actually is the truth here. I think this is primarily to include or not include Shantarasa was primarily an argument between the dramaturgists and the literary people. The literary people had no problem with it,
Okay.
but the dramaturgists had a problem, and there was a very technical problem which they faced. Like what they said, in order for a rasa to materialize, you have to have a sthayi bhava, which runs through the entire work.
Yes. Absolutely.
Now, they said that if Shanta is the rasa, what is a sthain? Like from the beginning of the play till the end of the play, if everything is calm, then where is the action? How does it unfold? The ending, the last, the culmination must be Shanta. It must be resolution, but not the entire thing. So, it was a problem that the drama people put out. And they also argued saying that that is why Bharata has not included it in the Natya Shastra. But as Dr. V. Raghavan, one of the most eminent cultural historians of our country, he says, but when the Buddhist and the Jain playwrights and the poets, started presenting their works, this kind of paved the way for the entry of Shanta to a great extent, especially with Buddha Charitra of Ashwaghosha, where the philosophical discourses happen right from the first chapter to the last chapter. So you do have the Sthai Bhava of Kshama, Vairagya, and all these elements present right through the whole thing. This kind of kick-started the arguments, and then Abhinavagupta, as usual, what you always say, Abhinavagupta is the ultimate, charam seema of any concept. When Abhinavagupta talks about it, then there is nothing left to say. So he shows very beautifully, giving examples, he demolishes the arguments against Shantarasa. And he says, to say that Bharata has not mentioned it is a ridiculous argument, because he gives many quotations there. He says, when Bharata talks about itivritta, or the themes, so he says, dukkhartanam, kshamartanam, tapasvinam, all these, things you can show. So he's used the word kshama, which is considered to be a sthai bhava of Shanta. He has also used the word tapasvi. Then he also talks about, he says dharma kama, ardha kama, and he talks about moksha kama. So Abhinavagupta says moksha kama is nothing but Shanta, a desire for moksha. Then he also gives you another example where he says, kvachit dharmaha, kvachit krida, kvachit arthaha, kvachit chama. This is another sentence he quotes. And he says, where there is sport, where there is dharma, where there is, financial growth, where there is love, where there is chama, or where there is equanimity, or sama, as we would like to call it, there you can find the itivritta of the drama, he says. So all these arguments Abhinavagupta gives. And then also we find Shanta in Vishnu Dharmottara Purana being quoted as an independent rasa. It states clearly that Shanta is a very important independent rasa for which the Adhideva is the supreme being. And it gives Vairagya as the Sthai Bhava of it. So there were arguments for Shanta, but it is a very logical process of inclusion into the Navarasa pantheon.
Yes.
And it's nothing to do with patriarchy or anything. It's a logical argument, because the literature people had no problem. It is only the dramaturgists who argued against it.
Okay. So
And were convinced otherwise.
yes. And there is a need for it, because it flows very nicely in with all the other disciplines, because what you have as Shantras, the same concept is being repeated in almost every discipline.
Yes.
There is that universal element, you can call it Brahma, you can call
Culmination
it
into something. The ninth being
something.
Shanta is most logical.
Yes.
Because after all, everything.
From which everyone arises and everyone, every bhava subsumes.
Yes. Yes. That is a very logical conclusion to the idea.
Even 1000 years ago, during the era of Abhinavagupta, people had these doubts and they were asking about all of it.
Oh, yes. In fact, there is one book written by Dr. V. Raghavan, which is called The Number of Rasas. That book deals only with Shantarasa.
Okay.
So he gives you all the arguments to and against Shantarasa, what was the problems, why this rasa did not find its place in the beginning. There were only Ashtarasas, and then how it came to be included in the rasa pantheon. So he gives you a very elaborate description of this.
Okay. Now I have to come to it is also at the same time a very personal question and a very universal question. That someone would ask, why rasa? Why this concept in our lives? For example, I could argue from a very atheist point of view in this regard, that I am a successful scientist or an engineer. I earn very well. I put all my energies into making my body and making my life very efficient. I earn very well. I live with all the modern amenities. Art is just an obstruction, because it is inefficient. It is not leading to science and technology, to increase all the resources that are around me. And my goal is to keep maximizing the resources that I consume, maximizing the comfort that is around me. So I should put all of my energies there. Why waste it so many hours, so many weeks, months and years, and entire lives, so to say, in something which is, at the end of it, there is no industry as such. So what is that process? Why rasa?
So let me be very honest. if you ask me why Rasa, I really cannot tell you why it is so. But I have some questions, which come to mind. Why then, if you look at some of the greatest scientists, some of the most logical minds in the world, they have been the greatest advocates for art, for music, for painting, for literature. Considering the inessential quality of art, why would they advocate it? Probably because the more you understand the cosmos, the more you understand the universe, the more you understand that you need something beyond the logical to be able to perceive the logical.
Trans-intellectual, as you say.
Trans-intellectual, it is to think so much that you negate the thinking mind. And I think to a great extent, that is why Rasa. That is why Rasa, because as a human being, a thinking, living, breathing human being, why is it that, in the Indian systems, every technical aspect has been treated as a being? When we talk about tala, tala is a technical aspect, rhythm is a technical aspect. But you say dasha pranas of the tala.
Yeah, you give chetana to it.
You say angas.
Yes, absolutely.
So only a living, breathing thing will have angas, it will have prana. So that means you're looking at everything as animate.
Through a conscious eye.
Through
all
a
the ayodhas, they are purushas at the same time.
And in fact, in the Pancharatra Agama, the Kaumudaki is a woman.
Yeah.
So you look at it, the different ayudhas are, manifested as Chetana, as beings. Concepts like Tala, Raga, all these are manifested as beings. So when there is a living, breathing entity, they cannot just exist. They have to experience life. And experiencing life is impossible if you do not understand that there is rasa. Because the idea of rasa itself is to relish. Otherwise, you are inanimate. If you do not relish, then you are inanimate. The aswada of it makes it a relishable idea. So, if you look at it, there is no real answer as to why do we need rasa, but I think the only answer is that we cannot do without it. If we have to be a living, breathing human beings with a consciousness, which needs to be constantly tapped into, rasa is the only way forward for that. Because rasa is nothing but experience.
Yes. So if it is connected to experience, can we say that Saundarya is samakaksh to Satya? It is equal to Satya, and that's why it is as essential as finding truth or meaning in life?
Absolutely, because even in the artistic world also, whether you take painting, sculpture, or you take music or dance, you take the fine arts or you take the performing arts, they all work on the Satyam Shivam Sundaram principle. That Satyam is equal to truth, is equal to beauty. Without Saundarya, there is no understanding of art. There is no understanding of art at all. And without an understanding of Saundarya, there is no understanding of truth.
So it is on this concept that you have shot with us 10 episodes of Mṛdanga. So would you explain out for 1 or 2 minutes what you have done in those episodes?
So what I have tried to do, since they are short capsules, I have tried to bring the element of little explanation as well as abhinay into all the episodes. Because explanation, I wanted to focus on particular each rasa. So the first one is very general. I've spoken about the rasa sutra there. That is what constitutes this idea called the rasa siddhanta or the theory of rasa. How you have to have the vibhavas, which are the determinants, the anubhavas, which are the consequents. Then you have to have that one primary rasa, permanent rasa, which always stays in the work, the sthai. The flitting rasas, which are the vyabhichari bhavas, and then the involuntary rasas, which are sattvika. So all these 49 bhavas, how they all mingle together to produce rasa. And then why do you need bhava and what is rasa? So the primary misconceptions that people have, I've tried to address them in this. That is, rasa is not something we enact. It is the bhavas that we enact, and rasa is produced in the audience. So when you say I'm dancing the Navarasas, it's actually technically wrong. You are actually dancing the bhavas, and it is the rasas that are being produced there. So I've tried to look at some popular misconceptions, like when we talk about the devatas, the ugra devatas, and we show them killing the rakshasas, we call it raudra rasa, which is actually technically not correct, because they don't need to be angry. It is just Veera, it's Veera Rasa there. And Raudra, as the Natashastra says, is a Rakshasa Prakriti. It is not a very positive rasa. It's more a negative rasa, where you're, in fact, the sages ask a very interesting question, which I've explained. They say, why are you saying that anger is a Rakshasa or a Danava Swabhava? Don't we all get angry? Isn't it everyone's, prerogative? So here Bharata replies and says, yes, it is a prerogative for us, but it is Prakriti for them. It is their nature. So these kind of things, and I've tried to include different pieces of literature because it's difficult for us to find literature which is exactly in concurrence with one particular rasa. But I've tried to look at, I've taken from Kumarasambhavam, the Tarakasura, the war with the Subramanya Swami and Tarakasura. From there, I've taken the Bhibhatsa rasa because the explanations are very, very, very horrific of the war, the battlefield. I've taken Bhayanaka rasa from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswamin, where the boys come and tell Yashoda, don't ever talk about Putana. Again, she's so fearful. So I've even taken pieces from texts on poetics, like Rasamanjari of Bhanudatta, where I've given a little Shringara twist to Bhayanaka rasa. Very beautifully, because he says there, the hero, the Nayaka says, you were not fearful of the snakes on the path when you left everything to come and meet me. But now you're fearful if you're standing next to me. You were not fearful when the thunder and the lightning was happening, but you turn your face away when I talk. What is this? So it is a very sweet take on Bhayanaka. So I have tried to, bring different moods to the rasas also. Shringara, we have Vipralambha and we have Sambhoga Shringara. So, Shringara, love in union, love in separation. Of course, love and separation is more popular because once the union happens, you get the end. So the expectation, Vipralambha always contains within it the possibility of Sambhoga.
And that's why it's more interesting.
So it is more interesting. So I have done two different pieces for Sambhoga and for Vipralambha. So we have tried, I've tried to bring in as many kind of literature as I can within, that given time. And yeah, it was an interesting experience for me.
I hope this series, and I know very well that it will go a long way in explaining to more and more people what these bhavas and rasas are. We conceived of this series when I was on an Anveshi tour and I was in a temple actually. So, we are talking of the interdisciplinary concepts in while having darshan and while performing on a stage. So, I was actually standing in front of a garbhagriha when I talked to you and we conceived of this series.
That's news for me. That's wonderful.
This Mridang series, and now we are talking of it in our both series. I hope that more such conversations happen. We will keep inviting you because more Indian Hindu eyes need to look at the world, because we keep talking about being Vishwaguru. But the only way in which Bharat can be Vishwaguru is to be Vishwaguru in knowledge, and that is the primary in the substratum of being that. And the first step is not just to have a political view on everything, but also to have the cultural aesthetic point of view of the entire world. We need to look upon the art everywhere else and to interpret according to us.
It is experiential knowledge that is most important for the, our system of thought.
Yes.
And as you said, the political, those scenarios will change, but the cultural context of this nation will always remain the same. So I think that is, yes, that's a brilliant, way to approach the whole idea, I think. And that's wonderful. It's been great.
Thank you, Anupama ji, for
Thank
being
you.
here. We'll keep turning the gaze and look upon art and the world and life like this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.